Okay, good evening. This is our first warrant committee meeting that we've had an absent chair, but here electronically. So welcome to Lee Michael McLean, but I guess I'll be handling some of the chores here. I'm Ted Hayes, now the secretary of the warrant committee, and we have with us tonight about half, maybe all of the library trustees and the director of the library, Will Adamczyk. And we're going to start right away with a presentation from the library. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Ted, and thank you to the committee for having us here tonight. And I'd like to thank my trustees for coming and supporting the library as well. I'm going to try to give a brief overview of the current state of library services in the town of Milton, and talk a little bit about our budgets that we were asked to submit, the contingent budget and the non-contingent budget. So I will, without further ado, go through this. So the library is really a vital part of our community here in Milton. It's used by all segments of society. Am I in the way? Should I move? No?
You're good.
Okay. It's used by all segments of society. It's used by people of all ages, people of all parts of town, people of all kinds of backgrounds. Yesterday was an excellent example of that. We had our annual Downton Abbey tea at the library yesterday. We were pushing the fire code on that one, but we had a full house. I saw people from my book groups at Fuller Village. I saw some of the kids who come in after school from the different schools that had tables. So it was a very diverse group using the library for just that one particular event. Everyone uses the library, like I just said, and it's free for everyone, from birth through older adulthood. We have different services for different ages. We have, story times when you're little, technology assistance when you're older, things everywhere in between. But everyone in Milton uses the library. I try to say, a typical day. There is no such thing as a typical day at the library. Something out of the ordinary seems to happen every day. But if I'm speaking really generally, mornings are a quiet time at the library until the kids come in at 10 o'clock for story time. Then you might call it loud. But it's the quieter time. It's for toddlers, their caregivers. A lot of seniors come in to use the library services in the morning. And then we have a rush at lunchtime. People come in at lunchtime. After lunch, the afternoons are a very busy time at the library, especially in the past several years. We get a full crowd from the Pierce Middle School every afternoon. We've been averaging 35 to 45 or 50 tweens, as we call them these days, in the library. 6th to 8th graders outnumbering us by quite a bit. And that has really taken a toll on library services, but it's great to have them, but I'll talk about later the need to address more services for them or to meet the demand for their services. And then the evenings are, again, a quieter time, usually for students, adults, a lot of programs at night, a lot of people studying, a lot of community groups meeting in our community spaces. The library services a full, diverse population of Milton, regardless of background. And that's just a couple of usage statistics. There's a lot of different ways to measure how a library is being used. And it's been changing. Library use has been changing over the past several years. We've been evolving with the times. One of the things that's a benchmark usually is circulation. And circulation in regular English is checking out books, checking out movies, checking out CDs. And this chart just shows a comparison between the year we opened the new edition of the library, that fiscal year, and last year. And you can see this is a breakdown by children's books, teen books, and adult books. And you can see the growth we've had in those categories over the past several years. Another usage comparison, and this is something where we've seen some of our largest growth over the past several years, is in programming. It could be story times, it could be movies, it could be art classes, speakers. But since we've moved to the new space, we have a better space to offer programs. And there's been a bigger demand for programs. There's wait lists for many of the programs we have now, but you could see, especially the huge jump in children's programming. There was nowhere to go but up for teen programming because we didn't offer any teen programs 5 or 6 years ago. And adult programming was very small. We've been able to expand that quite a bit. With again, creative programming or speakers for the adult audiences. And that brings me to something. I was at a library conference today. The national conference was in Boston this week. And somebody said, and one of the themes of one of the programs I thought was really good. It said, libraries are no longer about what we have. They're more about what we do. It used to be that libraries were, quiet old archives where we kept dusty books. It's not that way anymore. We still keep books, we still keep DVDs, we keep CDs. They're not dusty because they go out quite a bit. But we do a lot more. We offer programming like I just talked about. We offer computer usage in the library. We have Wi-Fi. We have standalone computers that you can sign into. We offer assistance with all our digital technology. So it's a lot more about what you do at the library than what we have. Another thing is the library's everywhere. It's 24/7 now. The building's not quite open 24/7, but the staff would argue that. We're the physical building on Canton Ave, right across the street. We're a virtual place with our website and our different social media. We're outreach. Our children's librarian, especially Sarah Trogue, she goes to schools, preschools in town on a fairly regular basis, teaching them the basics of what a library is, getting a library card, and what library services are. I regularly go to a number of places like Fuller Village, Winter Valley, Pine Tree Brook, different senior places in town doing book discussions and technology trainings. And we're also a presence in the community. So we go represent the library at Celebrate Milton. We go to the farmers market. We're a visible presence at these. And our newest addition is something we're starting to work on is Little Free Libraries. I don't know if people know about the Little Free Library movement, but it's basically, it looks like a mailbox of sorts. We're going to put them in parks around town, and it's free books. You can take one, you could leave one. It's just to promote reading in the community. So you can look for those coming up. So what does the library do? So I've talked a lot about programming. I've talked about who uses the library. The fundamental mission of public libraries in America is to offer free books, free services, free programs for the communities that they serve. Ben Franklin said an investment in knowledge always pays the best dividends, and he was right at the beginning of the public library movement in America. Some of the things our library here focuses on is early literacy. We're where people bring their children before they're going to school, before they go to preschool. It's the early parts of socialization. It's listening to stories in a group. So it's really the formative years of early literacy. We're lifelong learning. We provide educational support for students of all ages. We try to help the do-it-yourselfers who come in, home improvements, gardening, whatever it might be, and for people who are just curious and want to continue learning. We're a community meeting place. We provide a space for municipal groups, nonprofit groups, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, town soccer, and other groups to meet. We provide a space for community discussions. We have things such as Milton Reads. We have book discussion groups, other events. We provide reference services. That's one of the other standards of fundamental of library service. It's where people come to get their questions answered. Any given day, it could be 100 different kinds of questions. We provide free services and free collections, both in the library and online. And the reference staff helps people utilize these services. It's also, the library now provides technology services. There's still a fairly good percentage of people who don't have computers in their homes. We have regular users in the library who come in on a daily basis to check their email, to get work done, to print whatever they might need, resumes, and so on. And they're either using the library's computers or they're using our Wi-Fi and our printers. We offer assistance to people who are novices on computers that need to learn different parts of computer skills. Support for online collections, e-books, other digital technologies. We offer programs to introduce these to people. And in the children's department, we're offering more STEM and STEAM-oriented programs. We have a new iPad class that is being used in the children's room. And then finally, we're an archive and exhibit space as well. We maintain the Milton Historical Society collections. We maintain our own historical collections. We are a public art space, both the art that's been entrusted to the library and it's on more or less permanent display at the library, and we have monthly displays by local artists. So it's a place for local artists also to be displayed. So that's kind of who we are, what we do, who we serve. I'm just going to talk for a minute about some of our current challenges. And these are challenges that we face on a regular basis at the library. There's often not enough staff to provide adequate e-book training and e-book workshops. Right now, our total circulation or checkouts is growing to 8, 9, 10% of it be e-books. And there's a large percentage of people every day who are just doing it for the first time. And learning to check out an e-book could take staff 20 minutes to teach somebody, while in the same period of time we could check out 150 to 200 books. So it's a more time-inducive task. The other thing we're up against is a lot of waiting lists at the libraries. There's waiting lists for story times. There's wait lists for children's programming in general. Our meeting spaces are generally at capacity, especially in the afternoon and evening, booked up by different groups. We need to, utilize the morning time, so we don't have the staffing for that right now. If you've ever been in the library around 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon, good luck finding a place to sit. It's very busy with students and other users of the library. There's a lot more tutors using the library than ever before. Times have changed. Tutors meet in the library. They don't meet in homes for the most part. So there's not a lot of space in the library in the afternoons. There's waiting lists for adult programming, too. We have a lot of creative programming, the color book craze that a lot of people are using, adult coloring books, things like that, art programs. There's a waiting list for school visits. Everybody wants a piece of Miss Sarah's time, so there's a waiting list for that. The waiting list for off-site book discussions. There's only so much of me and others to go around to meet the demands of people who can't get to the library on a regular basis to have book discussions. And there's increased wait times to get print and e-books materials from the library. Now, the next slide, there's 2 slides here, just comparing the Milton Library to some other libraries. Over the past 3-5 years, we've been comparing Milton to Belmont, Hingham, and Winchester. Those are libraries within our population cohort that we see as the ideal, the top libraries, based on their circulation and their funding. This year I expanded it to show some other libraries geographically, with Canton and Randolph being close by. And the ones with the letter P are based on population. So Milford, Stoughton, and Wellesley are very close to our population. Just to add a couple of libraries. Again, this is a small example of library services. And these are all different usage things. So first column, you have your population. We're the 3rd largest of this group. Annual hours open. Again, we're in the middle. We're 4th in this group. I have to say Wellesley's numbers look inflated. It's because they have a branch library. I still included them because they're 27,000, just about us. People through the door, we're right in the middle. That's the visits, and the number 5, program attendance. We're right in the middle. And it's not that people aren't attending programs, it's more that people can't attend because of the wait lists. Our room use, we're towards, in the top 3 for room use. And that's from community groups, as well as some library use. Circulation, again, we're right in the middle of that pack, over 300,000. In the holdings, that's our book collection, we're lower down that list. We're towards the bottom half of the list anyway. Full-time equivalent employees, we rank 8th. And that speaks a lot to the wait list and wait times for programming. Per capita funding, again, bottom half, closer to the middle. In total, municipal appropriations, I believe this was last fiscal 15 numbers, towards the middle. These numbers are all available. Every year, the Mass Board of Library Commissioners does a research survey on library use. These are just some of the numbers that they have in there, but they do collect that annually, and that is a good resource for us. So planning for the future. So today, the budgets that we're presenting, they're not coming out of nowhere. We've done more than our due diligence, I think. We've used a lot of historical data. The libraries are good at that. We like numbers, we like statistics, so we've been keeping them for a very long time. So we're using historical data. We're using the annual survey data that I just showed you compared to other libraries. We use the 5-year financial forecast that the town went through over the summer. That was an exercise we used. And then the library long-range plan, which we recently updated this fall. We went through the process of a long-range plan over much of last year, including focus groups and interaction with different segments of the community. That plan was approved by the library trustees in the fall, and it was accepted and approved by the state and the Mass Board of Library Commissioners also in the late fall. And the focus of that long-range plan comes out in our budget. It again is early literacy, lifelong learning, stimulate imagination, which would be creative programming and new books. Connect to the online world supports technology and computer services, from the standard desktop through iPad, Wi-Fi. Visit a comfortable place, which is maintaining the building and maintaining a website, social media, just improving the physical space that people visit. So the budgets are based on this past performance. They're based on the current challenges, and they're based on the current needs as determined through this and the community discussions that we had as formulating our strategic plan. So the fiscal 17 contingent budget addresses the following things. It addresses meeting current demands for services. And these were outlined in the challenges I presented to you. Contingent budget funds the general expenses to meet the current demands on building maintenance and building use. So it's physical plant and cleaning supplies. Those are two of our, electricity, fuel, and cleaning supplies are very large for the library, maintaining that building. It's open 7 days a week most of the year. And then they meet the state aid minimum requirements for library materials. So that's the bottom of the requirements for state aid for materials. The largest increase in our budget, in our contingent budget, is in staffing. And I will say staffing increase affects our materials increase. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but based on state aid requirements, materials expenditures are a percentage of overall appropriations. So if electricity goes up a little bit, materials goes up a little bit. If, cleaning supplies or salaries, those all affect overall the materials budget. So in the contingent budget, we're requesting 5 positions, 3 full-time and 2 part-time positions. These are to meet the current demands on library services. One is a full-time reference librarian, and the focus of this reference librarian would be to help meet the demand on library services in the afternoons when we have the influx of Pierce and high school students. Right now, we have a teen librarian. The teen librarian's not able to do any teen librarian programming because we more or less become not necessarily a babysitter for these students, but we spend more time watching and policing them than we do doing library service often. So we need more staff in the afternoon to help address both offering more teen services to get them more involved in the library, but also to help just with the constant questions and the flow of the students. The second position is a reference/tech librarian. So that position, it's basically a reference position that their emphasis would be more on helping with ebook training, helping with the new digital music or digital magazine services that the library has. So they'd help with the training needs. They'd help train first the staff in anything new, and then help train the public and meet any of the in-house technical issues that we might have, especially around ebooks. The next is a full-time library assistant. We added a part-time library assistant last fiscal year, so July 1st, and already we're not meeting the demand for books to be returned, books to get back on the shelf. The day-to-day checkout structure of the library has changed a lot in the last couple of years. It's gone a lot, not all the way away from physical, but there's a lot more questions around the digital, and that takes up more staff time. There's a part-time children's librarian, and this is to meet the demand for more programming in the children's room and more outreach to schools in the community. And finally, a part-time library assistant, and this library assistant will work hand in hand with the technology librarian, expanding the technology needs of the library, expanding technology training of the library, and they'd be able to have a point of contact on both floors of the library for technology issues. That's another challenge we have is, we have multiple public desks, different staff trained in different things, so the more technology assistance we can have in the library, the better. This is just a slide to show the growth of the library usage over the last 6 years. Inordinate growth in programming, large growth in public computing, reference questions, circulation, and library visits. And you see the smallest growth has been in our staffing level. So the staff has been trying to keep up with this demand on a regular basis. Now, a non-contingent budget, it does not address current demand on library services. We'd not be able to meet training needs. We'd not be able to help with the wait lists for story times and programming. We wouldn't be able to address the need for study spaces and utilizing the lower level of the library as a possible study space because we can't staff that. Not enough programming to meet current demands, wait lists for school visits, wait times for ebooks and print collections. A non-contingent budget does not support the new strategic plan for the library. And I'm getting there. Factors affecting the fiscal 17 budget. So there's the state aid requirements, the municipal appropriation requirement. This includes the appropriations and the revolving funds. And it's state mandated that you spend 102.5% of the average of the previous 3 years, which is roughly the $1.3 million. Materials expenditure requirement requires you spend 13% of that appropriation on materials, and it could be appropriation and revolving fund. We have the revolving fund to pay part of the materials budget. Materials can be books, DVDs, databases, ebooks, so it's a lot of different things. And those are the figures for the contingent and non-contingent. And I just wanted to talk about the materials revolving fund briefly. It's so small I can't read it on my screen, but what I've been saying over the last couple of years is that we're starting to see a decline in revenue from the revolving fund. Part of it is people are afraid to keep things late. I don't know, but really what it comes down to is that we're seeing an increase in ebook circulation. That increase in ebook circulation has a slight decrease in print circulation, as compared, and we can't charge overdue fines on ebooks. If you check out an ebook, after 2 weeks, it's just not on your computer anymore. So you can't keep it late, you can't have fines. So you'll see on this graph that over the last 3 years, running into this year, that we've collected less money in our revolving fund. I think this will level off at some point. I don't know when it will level off, but as this decreases, funding source for our materials is decreasing, which means we need more in the regular appropriations for this. And like I said, it's ebooks' inability to collect fines and the fact that they're a larger percentage of our overall circulation. We have a couple of supporting groups for the library. We have the Friends of the Milton Public Library and the Milton Library Foundation. These are organizations, independent organizations with their own boards that help supplement the library programming and some of their services. The foundation gave money for a new website, which is hopefully will launch by the end of this month. And the Friends constantly are assisting the library with programming. I hit something wrong. Where did I go? You think so?
Microsoft PowerPoint has encountered a problem and needs to close.
Oh boy. Technology day, isn't it?
There you go. Just open back up.
Oh, here it is in the background.
Okay.
I'll take it from the top.
Quick review.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
So it basically is a quick review. So a contingent budget supports the mission of the library. It supports the fundamental mission of public libraries, offering free services, free programs to the residents of Milton. And again, it's no longer what we have, but what we do. So the library is doing a lot more. We're a lot more active. We used to be a lot more passive. It supports the long-range plan of the library, and it meets the current demands of the Milton residents on the library for library services. And again, I'd like to thank the trustees for helping with the presentation and for being here tonight. And I will I'll bring this mic with me to the other end of the table. That's it.
Thank you very much, Will. That's great. Good job. They agree. Won't like it, but it's not going to. Email it to me. Just give it a yank. Okay. So Lee Michael, I'm sorry you weren't able to watch that presentation, but we will get a copy for you if you're still with us.
That's not a problem.
Okay, great. All right, so I think some of us might have some questions. And I think the first thing I would want to say, I don't know if Lee Michael wants to say something first or not, but...
No, Ted, I'm going to let you go ahead.
Okay, very good. First thing I want to say is great presentation. Thank you for distinguishing between the contingent and the non-contingent budget. Obviously, one of the difficulties when the warrant committee is trying to look at the whole budget picture is, all the departments of municipal government can't be growth industries, okay? we don't have growth revenue. We have 3% revenue. And last year the library enjoyed better than a 10% increase in its budget, and that is essentially unsustainable without an override, because any budget that goes up more than 3% is asking some other area of government to go down by the same amount. So it's I look at your slides and I see the 1.7% growth in FTEs over the years compared to all the booming growth in programs and everything else like that, and part of me says, wow, what a huge growth in productivity. You're doing so much more with the same amount. And then you also say, well, were you overstaffed to begin with? Probably not. So it's impressive what you're doing, but I'm sure a lot of us have some questions, just in general about. I have just opened the door here. Can you talk to us a little bit about outreach?
Sure.
Because it was never sort of probably in a lot of people's minds that outreach was part of a library's mission. And has it been historically? Is the school kind of taking advantage of you because they're not doing it themselves? What's going on here?
So I think outreach has always been part of library services. Some towns have bookmobiles that take the show on the road. Some towns just have coffee talks at different places. We do book discussions. To address the school specifically, we go to the schools to sell library services. We use it as an opportunity to try to get more people into the library, to get children library cards. And it's a mission of the library is to get children to come and take advantage of our collections and our services. We always have a summer reading program. The library always has a summer reading program. 2 years ago, we thought we had a very successful summer reading program. The children's library is very hopping. We had about 300 students, children registered for that. This past year, we focused part of our outreach in the schools on library online services and the upcoming summer reading program at the library, to the result of having 1,500 students registered for the summer reading program. So the outreach really, it brings the library into the community, and then it brings the community back to the library. And that's our goal. That's our mission, is to have people come and use the library. But our mission is also, people can't always get to the library. There's senior homes that we go to, and that people wouldn't normally be able to get out to the library. So we actually have book deliveries to some of them, but we also try to bring programming to them as well. Library services isn't just in the building now. We try to spread it out into the town a little bit more. We've been doing school visits. I don't want to say forever, for a very long time, and that's a very normal public library service, especially around here. And we promote. We're not teaching a class, we're promoting what the library has to offer when we do the outreach.
Great. Are those summer reading programs, are those developed in conjunction with the English faculty at the schools?
No,
How does that work?
It's a statewide summer reading program. Because it's statewide, we're able to save on costs for posters and programming that go along with it. It's usually a thematic program. If Reach for the Stars, you do space programming, things like that. It's more or less just an incentive to read during the summer, and it's usually the younger age groups that have it, and it's a lot of times kids who don't have summer reading from the schools. So it's the elementary schools often.
Mm-hmm. So I have another question regarding one of the things you mentioned as a burgeoning problem, which is wait times.
Right.
hasn't that been an aspect of libraries forever? Oh, I can't get the book because somebody else has it.
It
I have
has.
to wait. I mean, instant gratification is wonderful, but
Right.
you know, isn't waiting just a part of the program? I mean, we're trying to eliminate that. It's great, but really?
Right, no, there's always been wait times.
Yeah.
I remember eons ago, people waiting 6 months for the new John Grisham because libraries only ordered one copy of things. But those times have changed. What's happened is we're not meeting, our current book budget doesn't meet the demand, the growing demand for readers in Milton. So there's always been a wait list. Let's say the wait list was 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. The wait lists now are 3 to 4 weeks. We're ordering, you know, basically the same amount, a little bit more, but there's more people wanting the books. There's a larger hold list for the titles. So instead of, and we've concentrated a lot of our materials budget on cutting down wait lists. We have a mechanism set up so that anytime we see that, you know, more than 3 or more than 5 holds on an item, we order more copies. But as soon as we order those more copies, there's more demand for those popular titles.
And what have ebooks done for hold times and wait times?
Ebook wait times are worse than print wait times. There's a lot more limitation in the number of ebook titles, and there's a lot more restriction as to how many accesses to those titles we can have at a given time. So those haven't alleviated the print. What they've done is they've created a whole new wait queue for people.
So electronic reading is not solving anything in terms of library costs.
No, it's not solving anything as far as library costs. It's great because it's introducing new readers to libraries. But since last year, at least the cost of ebooks have started to come down. If people recall, you know, the average hardcover book, new hardcover book for the library might be $15 to $18. Last year, it was ebooks were closer to $60. E-audiobooks are crazy, like $80 to $100. Those costs have begun to come down, which is helping, you know, helping us to order more copies when we are able to for ebooks. But they're not saving us money.
It's too bad. Darnell.
2 quick questions. One, when you were doing your presentation, you basically said y'all use a 3 to 5 year strategic plan.
That's right.
And putting that together, and you kind of piggybacked it off of some of the information out of the 5-year plan that the town had put together and putting together. I want to say thank you, for first of all, because that's one of the things with this contingent budget that I've been trying to speak with groups and people who I speak with about that, is that when we do these contingent budgets, we have to understand that it's going to have to go for maybe 3 to 4 years before we look at this again. And if we don't look at it that way, we're going to be cutting everything from a point zero, because might not get back. So at least people know what we're actually losing by not doing it and not fully funding these things.
Right.
And so I wanted to thank you for doing that. And I didn't know if it was a requirement that the state put on us to have to go ahead and think that way, or if that was just something that, as the board, y'all decided this is what we needed to do to get the resources we need for the library.
So I think the library has historically done strategic planning on its own. So this strategic plan we just finished a 5-year strategic plan for the library, and we are introducing a new one that starts fiscal year 17. But this time around, we tied it more into both the discussions at the master planning committee meeting that went on over a year ago, and we tied it into the 5-year financial forecast more than we had in previous years. And it's that part's not a state requirement, but the state does require libraries to do strategic planning as part of the state aid process. But there's no specifics about talking to the rest of the town about it.
I just want to add that we decided to do a 5-year financial plan way before we
Right.
were requested to do that by the town. So that was something that we decided to do about 1.5 years ago.
Right.
We began that process. So for our own purposes, to look at what we would need, as the library changes, and how, Will is constantly looking at the types of staff that he has, and how do you change them and move them around as people retire and you bring on new staff, how should you reorganize to be able to support the needs that we have? So.
Chuck?
Is the new staffing that you requested, does that satisfy the strategic plan, or is this just part one? I was a little confused from the narrative.
Sure. We think that this should satisfy the majority of the first 3 years of the strategic plan. There's a couple of parts of the strategic plan where we are reviewing the need for other positions, like a custodial position, and that's not addressed in this request because we have consolidated facilities. But it should address. We made a 5-year plan, but 3 years of it's real, and the other 2, it's hard to look out 5 years. So we'd be doing an action plan update to those years, but this should meet that.
And have you made this? This is a great presentation, by the way. Have you made this presentation to the Board of Selectmen?
We have not.
Are you planning to?
We generally don't make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen. The library trustees approve the library budget. It's not approved by the selectmen, so we haven't historically made the presentation.
They can watch it on TV.
We could, but
I would send them a copy.
yeah, absolutely.
Why not? It's a little easier to look at that than tuning in. Well, I'm sure everybody wants to watch this. Michael?
Yeah, well, thanks again. This is the second time through this presentation for me, but it's just as good the second time, maybe even better than the first time. I wonder if you could just describe one of the big pieces is the additional staffing that you're
Right.
going to need, 4 full-time equivalents. And you described a process where there's new technology and some of your customer base don't know how to use the
That's right.
checking out of the e-books that well, and you can't do it as fast, and so you need more frontline staff. I guess, I'm wondering, is that a thing a problem that's going to go away as people learn how to do this? So that, we could staff up for something that's going to be a problem in 5 years, people will know how to do it?
Right.
And there's a second part to the question.
First part is, I hope it goes away, but it seems like we always are introducing a new program or a new digital technology, so there's always something new that we have to teach people. We had Overdrive ebooks, which was pretty horrible to learn in the beginning, much easier now. We also have a new ebook, statewide ebook database that people have to learn. There's always something new, so I anticipate if they're not teaching the same thing this year, they'll be teaching something different next year. But what Chris also referenced was, looking at a new organizational model for the library. So there would be people who can cross-specialize. So the people who might be teaching this now, we might be able to move into programming support or other, adult or children's services down the road.
Okay, so the second part of my question was kind of like, if you think it's going to be new, continuously growing, it wouldn't be a thing where you could bring in temporary expertise, like, let's throw some training together for our main users and get them up to speed so they can check books out faster,
Yeah, the problem with that is, one, I think there'll be changes to the technology and new databases, like I said. We've offered classes, and we have libraries have made YouTube videos. We've tried things like that, but what it comes down to is people need to have their hands on it and you sitting next to them for them to really get it. Oftentimes, when I go out and I do book groups at Fuller Village or somewhere, often afterwards, that's what I'm doing is showing people how to do it. It's a very hands-on.
Well, I'm sure, warrant committee meetings used to start faster before they had technology.
I hear you.
So.
Darnell?
Talk about some adult or elderly programming.
Sure.
Now, as a person with 3 people, 90 years old, in Milton, who love their little tech and stuff. Do y'all have any programming or classes or education for, it sounds crazy, but tablets and cell phones and stuff like that? Because, like I said, multiple calls every week.
It's a great
about
question.
What's a smartphone do? What's, so, and trying to find a place that I can like send them.
So
That's selfish, I understand.
Oh,
but
no,
still.
we can't have everybody overburdening the library.
yeah. So the short answer is
Turning into a daycare and a
Did you take my
school and
wife's
everything
phone
else.
calls?
seriously.
No, that's it. I
No,
just,
so the short answer is the contingent budget would address that, but we don't. I mean, we've offered standalone classes when we have staffing, but it's not on a regular basis. And what happens is different people come into the library for how do I download an app to my phone, and depending on who helps them, they adopt that person. And then the next time that person has a problem, they come in looking for Will, or they come in looking for Diane, or they come in looking for Sarah or Lily or whoever. But we don't have, we can't offer that with the current staffing.
so what were those names again?
Yeah. we can talk after. We can talk after.
No, that's,
But it's something that happens
and I
every day.
understand it, yeah.
It happens every day, though.
Steve?
Couple of different areas of question, but
Sure.
the usage, you've been comparing the usage 2015 back to 2009.
Right.
So there's a significant jump up.
That's right.
Can you tease out the 14 to 15? Because, from the 14 data, you were able to get some additional help
Right.
in this fiscal year.
Right.
Has there been such an increase in the demand
Sure.
in that time period that would suggest this?
Sure.
It's, comparing it to when you said there was some of the things that there was no services whatsoever, it's going to show an enormous growth.
So even from 15 to 16, and 14 to 15 and 15 to 16, our largest growth areas are still service-oriented. So programming attendance continues to rise. We've actually started to offer less programs, but more people are attending them. It's not a lot less programs, but we've tried to eliminate programs that we don't have high attendance for and concentrate on the other ones. So programming attendance at all age groups has continued to rise. Children's just goes up exponentially somehow. The demand for digital and ebook services continues to rise every year.
I guess what I'm trying to focus in on is if you have head counts from
Sure.
one year to the next, so you say for 14, we had 10,000, the next year we had 75,000.
Sure.
As opposed to 0 in 2009, and then now you're at 75,000. So to more of frame how it's
Okay.
growing rather than just show the gross.
Okay. I think I have those statistics on me somewhere. But so programming has gone up. Well, it's hard to say exactly. A couple thousand compared to last year. But we're looking at,
Yeah, don't look for it now, you can
yeah,
get back to it.
yeah, I can give you that.
We can break that
Yeah.
out.
The other question that the state grants for the 102%, 202.5% of your average 3 years, if a community misses that, do they get no money?
So if a community misses it, generally speaking, you get no money.
Okay,
More detrimental to the community is you no longer get what we call reciprocal borrowing, which means Milton residents could no longer borrow materials from other towns. So right now, if somebody wants a book, and it's an obscure book, and we don't have it in Milton, but they have it in Quincy, they'll put it in a van and it'll be here in a day or so. People wouldn't be able to go to other libraries and check out books or get, like I said, books from other communities.
so that's pretty much a no matter what, you're gonna find money to do that.
We hope so, yes.
And if you have a year where, you suddenly, there was free cash or something, and they said, let's let's bump up the budget by $50,000, that would actually, in the long run, hurt you because it jumps up the 3-year average so much that you wouldn't be able to maintain it. So it's not a good formula.
If it was, I wouldn't say it would hurt us because we get $50,000.
Yeah, but then the next year, if you
It would
if you
hurt the-
couldn't get the 50 again, you'd be, or
That's
couldn't
right.
get at least 15 the next year,
That's right.
you'd have a problem.
So in the past, and this year, we have a request into the capital committee to one-time funds such as, we've gotten one-time funds for technology last year and the year before. And that was $25,000 a year. If it's a separate warrant article for that one-time money, it won't be counted towards that 102.5. But if it's in the operational budget, it would. It would count.
And so if you miss that, say that you were only able to hit 100% of your last 3 average, does it recalculate in with the 0 for the 3rd year? Or do you have to hit where you should have been?
The appropriations still, no matter what, are the average of the 3.
Okay.
So if you miss 1 year,
Let's say you had, let's be absurd, just said 0 for 1 year.
yeah, it
So
would,
does it
the
become
0 would
66
be
the
one of
next
the
time?
3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would lower
That's a
the
really
4th
weird
year.
formula.
I'm not suggesting we zero.
No, I'm
it.
not
I know,
either,
but
it's
yeah,
just a
no, I know what
bizarre
you mean.
formula.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
that formula is being reviewed by the state right now. I was on a committee that was reviewing it. There are a couple of recommendations in to change the formula, to move away from appropriation, to move towards either one recommendation is a full-time equivalent instead of appropriation, just for the fact that appropriations could go up and down in any given year depending on retirements and things like that. So that's being reviewed by the Mass Board of Library Commissioners.
Will, I believe Lee Michael has a question
Sure.
for you. Lee Michael?
Thanks, Ted. Will, when we were in your office,
Yes.
I pointed out to you that of all the budgets that we've received, the library sticks out a little bit in terms of the contingent request, the percentage increase. And we asked you if you had to prioritize 1 or 2 of these position requests, if we were to get an override this year, to put some thought into that. And I was wondering if you could just revisit that discussion for everybody's benefit here.
Thanks, Lee Michael. I'm looking for my list, but the priorities would be the 2 reference librarians. And the reasons for that are that one of our largest needs right now is basically reference staffing help in the afternoon to deal with the influx of students, but also to deal with the increased demand for programming. That person would be able to do both things. So that would be the general full-time reference librarian. And they're listed in order, well, maybe not in the budget, but let me check. The second position would be the other full-time reference/technology librarian, because the library is becoming much more a digital world. We don't have a specialist at the library to deal with ebook technology specifically, to deal with other digital technologies, streaming, library services coming in the future. So that, and training for those is also a demand. So it would be the first 2 news listed in the contingent budget. The reference technology and then reference librarian would be the 2 priorities for the library. And I'll share my presentation with Ted and Lee Michael for distribution. They're listed in order on that one. So it would be the full-time reference librarian, the full-time reference technology librarian, the full-time library assistant, which up there is, then the part-time children's librarian, and then the part-time
Thanks very much.
library assistant. All right, thank you, Lee Michael.
Okay, I've got Darnell, and then I've got Chuck, and
Just a quick question. I want to make because I know we went through this before. if something comes through as a capital item, it is not considered part of that formula.
That's right.
That's correct?
Right.
So the best way to do, if we were to do something one time, is try to work it through the capital
Right.
committee or something like that.
And that's what we've been able to do the last 2 years, and we have a request in this year.
Just want to clarify that, because I remember we went through that.
Yeah, it's
Well,
semantics for
If
that.
it's going to be more than 10 grand, it's supposed to go through capital anyway.
That's right.
So that's not, shouldn't be a problem. Does that
Big gift.
answer your question, Darnell?
Yep, that answers, I'm good.
I'm getting, I'm reading between the lines, because I have a couple of middle school kids, that the afternoon middle school rush, have you talked to peers? Is there some kind of, instead of hiring a full-time FTE, I know that wouldn't be the only thing that they did, but getting someone from the school to help, I say police, that's not the right word, but or keeping people organized and in line during that time period?
It's so I've worked with the peers. I've worked with Dr. Spalding over the past several years, and the need in the afternoon it's multiple needs. It's part of it is a monitoring need, part of it is a programming need, and part of it's a reference librarian need. So in previous years, there was an assistant principal at the Pierce. That position was cut last year in the budget, so there hasn't been that position this year. And that position historically was the most they were very active. They would visit the library on a fairly regular basis, at least once a week or so, just to put a fright into the kids to some extent, I would say. Like, hey, we know each other, the school's in the library. And there's been a little bit of that relationship, but they have less staffing at the Pierce now, so that hasn't been as strong this year as in the past. But the real need is it's less for policing and more for assisting. Yeah, but so, yeah, I talked to Dr. Spalding, and Nick Fitzgerald is there now as the dean, and I've worked with him this year.
But maybe also to add to that, we can't bring in non-library employees to the library to do library work, so it's a union issue.
Right.
So,
okay.
we can't just bring people
Yeah.
in, because we've had requests in the past every year, can't you have volunteers or people, that want to help, and that's a union issue, so, besides other issues.
Right.
Go ahead.
One of the things that we're looking to be able to do is we have a lower level where the big meeting room is, and that's not used a lot in the afternoon. The other space, the smaller spaces are. And the idea would be maybe to open that up as a study hall, open it up as a homework center. So this other librarian could be the homework help librarian, and take some of it's just there's not enough seats for the kids to sit in, and this would introduce a whole nother room for them to go to, which we don't have enough staff to open that floor for them in the afternoon.
So let me ask, does Pierce, if anybody knows, does Pierce have a library?
They do.
Does it shut down at 3 o'clock, or?
They have homework help after school, and the library's open. I'm not sure what time it's open till, though.
Okay.
They do. But they don't want to. Kids don't want to be in school longer than they have to.
Of course not.
No.
Jean, you had a question?
Yeah. So you used part of your revolving fund last year to balance your budget. Is that correct?
2 years ago, we increased the materials revolving fund by $20,000 to help meet the materials expenditure requirement. That was 2 years ago. That was part of the reason our budget grew dramatically last year, because that $20,000 that was from revolving was entered into the operation budget, the materials budget. But every year we use the revolving fund to fill the requirement. It's partial operations, partial revolving to meet the materials expenditure requirement.
Okay. So I just wanted to talk about the concept of a free library.
Sure.
Because I had forgotten that. when we talked, that it's supposed to be free. And of course, that smacks in the face of reality, because we talked about the library and the constant use of the computers to come in, the constant use of the people to come in to use the library for personal use, for business use. And the cost of that space, the cost of that equipment, the cost of the supplies are irrelevant, because you can only charge for a piece of paper. You can
Right.
only charge that. So the free library concept is in fact not free. It's not free for anybody. And so we're going to pay for it through tax dollars. And as fast as somebody, as I can see, as fast as somebody gets up to leave, someone else takes a place. So it's in constant use. So if you were to use it, if you were trying to use that as a cost center, and you were trying to recoup the funds, that would come out of, and that's what you do, and that's what you use your revolving fund for, supplies and when they're overrun, which they are.
Well, the revolving fund generally is just for materials.
Yeah.
The operating costs pay for the technology infrastructure and everything else in the building. The revolving fund, so we have two. The materials revolving fund is used strictly for materials. And then we have a revolving fund, which we call the facilities revolving fund, and that is based on lease payments for the Kidder building that is leased by Discovery Schoolhouse. Those funds are used for building repairs, building maintenance, primarily for the Kidder building, but also for the main library. Those are the only revolving funds. So the paper cost goes into the materials revolving fund right now.
Okay. When I go into the library, and it isn't programs for children, when there isn't a program running, and we talked about this before too, and I have my grandchildren with me, and there's no staff there. There's probably a volunteer who will help you check out books.
There's
But-
no volunteers that check out books.
Okay, so there's somebody there.
Yes.
But she's not active on the floor.
They're usually at the desk.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. So, if you wanted your child to use the computers, or you wanted
Right.
them to learn, there isn't currently somebody roaming around there.
No.
So you can go in there and not be able to get help with your children learning the,
Right now,
yeah,
you'd have to ask the person at the desk to come help you.
yeah.
And then there'd be nobody at the desk to help if somebody needed to check out a book. That's right. There's nights, the library has 19 employees, including myself, and there are times when if there's people sick or whatever the conditions might be, there might be three or four staff members in a building that's 3 stories. And so we're understaffed a lot of the time, often enough that if there are people in the children's room who need to check out books after a program, there's nobody on the floor to help somebody with a computer issue. And that's part of this, we'll address that, part of the contingent budget.
And that technician is the children's, is that,
The reference technology librarian would be throughout the building, wherever the need
Okay.
would be,
All right.
adult, children's, and teen.
okay, thank you.
Betty?
Just a quick question. The new positions that you're asking for in the contingent budget,
Yes.
do you have to go before Personnel Board to get those approved, or I wasn't sure if the library has to do that or
We
not?
do have to go before the Personnel Board to get them approved. At our initial, we've had one meeting with them thus far. They have approved the 2 positions that I prioritized, which
Okay,
would be the
thank
2 reference positions.
So I just wanted to get back to the revolving funds
Sure.
and your other sources of support, just so people are clear. Library has 2 revolving funds. The facilities can withdraw $25,000 a year. Took in $14,000 or about $15,000 last year. Okay, and that's strictly for building maintenance and upkeep. But it does figure into the calculation for support.
That's right.
Okay, for which, then that's your minimum appropriations
So whatever we take
requirement.
in, that goes towards it.
So the other one, the revolving fund for materials, traditionally was about 65,000 a year
That's right.
withdrawal limit. Okay, and they were able to put that directly to the materials appropriation requirement. We allowed them to do 1 year at, well, we wanted them to do 1 year at 85,000 because they were sitting on a sort of a trapped basement of 20 grand. They were never going to be able to get it out. At least we thought. Okay, so we increased their withdrawal limit to 85 so they could use it 1 year and get some extra money out, and that helped us because we didn't have the 20 grand to
Right.
help them with the materials
Yeah.
That's right.
requirement. So most likely they'll go back down to 65, and in that they only took in 57,000 last
right.
year, 65,000 might be a stretch in terms of a support. Then they also have gift accounts, and those are for materials. So is this, I wanted to ask you about this line. It says over here 40,000 that you took in 54.
That's right.
40,000 was donated by the Milton Library Foundation.
That's correct.
Now, if that's for materials, does that 1,000 of it went to your MAR last year?
That's right.
Okay.
MER,
And
materials
sorry,
expenditure.
expenditure.
Yeah, I know, they're all the same, that's right.
Materials
Yes.
expenditure
Yes, we're on the same
requirement
page.
versus municipal appropriation requirement.
Right.
So you're now sitting on 59,000 of that. What plans do you have for using that for materials? Is it restricted to materials?
It's not restricted to materials. 40,000 of that 59 is for the website that we're currently developing.
For the website?
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
That's the estimated
Got it.
cost for that.
Okay.
So that brings it down significantly. So in our request, we request the minimum requirement for the state for materials. So we like to use any gift accounts we can, not all of it necessarily, to supplement the materials expenditure, because basically we're funding it at the lowest acceptable level, and we want to be above the lowest acceptable level. So that's where the materials gift account helps out.
Right. The other source, which I think in the future like to see here under other available funds, is the state grant,
Sure.
because that is about $30,000 a year,
It is.
and it shows up in the budget as a separate line item because there's an offset for it, and people, including me, have been forever confused about how this works and where it goes. Well, it goes, we get it from the state, but then it is dedicated to the library, so it goes essentially straight to the library for
Right.
their usage. And it goes to an account. Is there a balance in that account other than,
There is. So we traditionally spend the previous fiscal year's state aid.
okay.
And so in the
So
past,
you pretty much spend what you get.
that's basically
You're
it.
not building up a
No.
war chest for
No,
anything.
no.
Do you have to spend that, or you can?
You don't have, the state does not require you to spend it that year. They suggest that you spend it that year. And that money is to be spent to supplement library services. So I also wanted to say in the past several years, the growth of that money was stagnant for many years, but it's risen over the past couple of years. I think it was about $27,000 when I started 3 years ago, and it was up to 32 last year, and we're anticipating 35,000 this year from that state grant.
This is the grant one would lose if we didn't hit the 102.5%
Right.
of
Absolutely.
average of the last 3 years.
That's right.
So that's an important thing, but it would be nice to see that accounted for here.
Sure.
And and, you know, describe on what kind of support you got from it.
Okay.
Because otherwise it, you know, a logical question would be, why can't you throw that into the materials budget and take a little pressure off the town?
Right.
And actually, I don't know, the materials expenditure requirement is a kind of a slippery thing, because if you cut your budget or add to it, then 13% of it moves.
That's right.
Okay? Right now, with your non-contingent budget, it looks like the general fund really only ought to put in 120 grand, but I'd have to play with that. And I think you're anticipating your 65,000 revolving fund not contributing as much.
That I anticipate closer to 50 to 55,000.
Right, which is why you've budgeted 131,000 instead of 120.
Right.
That could be looked at more tightly. Just if you want to make the numbers work. So, I don't know, does anybody have, Steve?
One more, Chris, from time to time at town meeting, the question comes up about the Kidder Trust or the Kidder revolving account and what you guys are doing with that. Is that something you could talk about at all?
I don't know, not just the Kidder Trust, but we have trust funds.
Okay.
So we have funds that were provided to us by individuals for different purposes. One is the Stackpole fund, so that is to be used only for scholarships for the pages that come in. We have two funds that we take out only the interest every year. We can't use the principal, and that's for, you know, for books and materials. We can use that. And one of those is the Kidder and the Oakland Hall account. Greg Buchanan's family donated money for historiography, if I say that right, but again, it's for specific types of materials or whatever. So those are the different types of accounts. We have the trust funds. There's a building account as well, which is left over mostly from when we did the renovations, but, you know, we're currently looking at some, you know, future things that we may need to invest in. We're looking at putting in a turnaround at the library, so to help with all the traffic issues. We've had a lot of traffic. There's been a lot of accidents out front, so we've done a lot of work on that. That's going to be a significant investment. We're also looking at trying to figure out how to solve the parking issue, which, because so many people come to the library, we've had a couple of things. We're now looking at another option, which again will be pretty significant. And the Kidder building itself is very, very old, and I don't know how many of you have ever been into it, but it constantly leaks and it has a lot of issues. So it's being rented, as Will said, by the Discovery Schoolhouse. But, you know, with Bill Ritchie, we've gone through kind of, as part of our 5-year plan, what are we going to have to do to that building in the next 5 years? And it could be very, very significant. So we're looking at what are we going to do with that issue.
So Chris and Will, could I suggest that on Schedule B in the future that you use it to be a little more transparent about these trust income pieces that you've just mentioned, so that, for instance, under fiscal year 15 revenue, you could say interest income from Kidder Trust, $4,000, expended $4,000, and then it's right out there for people to see in your public budget, or whatever it is. I think that would be useful.
I mean, that just, you know, giving out that money is something that we have as trustees, an option to do or not, based on how we're doing. So I guess, you know, if you look at the annual report this year, we haven't provided our treasurer's report in there. We are the only department in the town that has provided the details around their trust funds, and we've chose to not do that and disclose that in the annual report. It's available for anybody to, you know, access if they want, but for those of you that come to town meeting, every single year we are being, you know, questioned about our trust funds. There aren't any, I don't know about other departments that do that, so we can certainly include in here a note for what we, you know, what we put in there, but I guess including in a budget, an operating account, details around our trust funds, I guess I would we'd have to think about that as a board, how much of that.
Well, I think,
Happy to disclose it and be transparent, but as part of the budget process, we don't see those trust funds as being included here.
that's fine. I think it would be nice if you were able to provide a separate document then to the warrant committee or whoever was interested, because it is a question. You come to the town, you're looking for
Yep.
increased support, and so therefore we want to know what your financial circumstances are. You know, these trust funds, I mean, when people talk about trust funds, they always envision, you know, $241 million, you know, and the income from that, and it's just not the case. So I just think it might be an easy way to advertise that you do need the town's support. You're not going to make it on the income from the trust funds that you have at, you know, at your disposal. It's a suggestion. I think it would be helpful. And
I mean, again, just, I think we've talked about this a lot. We don't, the income from those trust funds are not to supplement what the town needs to support us in a budget. So I understand the situation you're all in. I've been there before.
Right.
But we expect the taxpayers to fund our department's budget like they would any other budget. And we don't expect to go to you don't go to the Foundation for Education and ask them to take out of that endowment fund to fund the school budget on an operating level. Certainly, that's, again, a supplemental budget, so.
right, but there are those questions, and it's just easier if they're answered, you know. And then you can put them aside and go, that's it for that year, you know,
So is
whatever.
there something specific that we didn't include here that you were looking for, or?
I wasn't, but Steve brought it up and reminded me that it comes up at town meeting every year, and if you want to avoid that, then I'm thinking this would be a perfect opportunity for you to put it there. You know, I don't think it's a big deal, but it would be, you know, people are interested.
It might be, if you just labeled it restricted funds, and that title in itself is telling, because legally you can't touch it.
Well, they're not, if they've been given for supplementing the budget as opposed to helping with materials, then that's what it's for. It's beyond the scope of the general fund budget. So, but it would be good to know.
Yep, yep.
So I think it would be a helpful step. But at any rate, I love the programming. I don't know what happens. I find myself going to the library more and more. So to that extent, you're successful. The programming is great, and I wish you wouldn't have any of it on Mondays and Wednesday nights. You know, that's for sure. And I don't know where we're going with the at this point, although I hope soon we'll have some better handle on where we're going with the contingent, non-contingent budget process. And obviously one of the things that has to be done is a non-contingent budget has to be put out there, and that may involve somebody talking to you about what kind of a cut you could afford. Obviously, no department wants to see any kind of a cut, but we do have to present the town with a balanced budget based on the revenues that we're anticipating. Sure. And if that involves a cut of 10, 20 grand to the library, then it could be dicey, you know. And I would hope that the first answer wouldn't be, oh my God, we're going to have to be closed on Sundays. But maybe it is, because that's you can't really do anything else, is my understanding, in terms of cutting hours.
Right.
So that would be unfortunate, because working with you over the last couple of years, I understand how the general expense budget is pretty tight. So, anybody have any more questions for Will or Chris?
I just want to add one thing. So since Will has been here, we've been able to, the programs, the services, or whatever that we've offered have been expanded, as you can see, exponentially. A lot of that has to do with his management of the library and how he's done that. He's taken the small staff that we have, and if you look at it, like you said, in comparison to the other towns, he's been able to figure out how to manipulate all of those different resources and people to provide a huge amount of service. And you're not the only one everyone loves the library. We've been really, really, really successful with what Will's done. And we're a success story, and unfortunately, that means we need more staff to be successful. So we know we don't want you to punish anyone else, but we want to continue to service. And because of the good hires that Will's had, the teen program, we had an awesome teen librarian he brought in, and she left, and the teens were, oh my God, she's going to leave. And it was only like a couple of weeks later, and the next hire that Will made has made the same impression on the kids again. So, the growth, the children's, the teens, the adults, the seniors are all, reflective in the successes and the things that Will's done to make the library a better place. So,
Thanks, Chris.
just want to add that. So.
Fabulous. I just had one postscript thought. I do have our Director of Information Technology here tonight, who will present his budget to us in a minute. And I believe they took over some of the library's IT.
That was part of my presentation last year. We started.
Right.
The library was one of the first to go on to agree to consolidated facilities years ago. We like to collaborate. So over the past couple of years, we've been working with Jim and Rob, and they're kind of our emergency call whenever we have major technology issues or minor technology issues. So now the library switched their IT support from who we had been previously using, and we've consolidated our services and our servers with Jim and with IT. And that's been a great resource for us because we didn't have anybody on the staff. We still don't have anybody IT on the staff, but we're able to call Rob and Jim, and they help out. And because we share servers and we share a service, they've been able to help out with replacements and repairs and all kinds of maintenance. And I should differentiate. The technology librarian we're requesting is less for the infrastructure that Jim's department helps us with, and more with the hands-on management of specific library services. But Jim could talk more, but we've been a pain in the neck to him at times. But they've been really good and really responsive. Libraries' technology issues are different than a lot of other departments, and they've done a lot of work for us and with us over the past couple of years.
We'd probably be negligent, I think, if we didn't also mention Bill Ritchie in the facility. So, the forming of that department has shrunk our budget, which the maintenance around what we have included here would be much, much bigger without his support. He has come to the library so many times and done things for us that we would not be able to do. So, we just want to, that was a great decision on our part.
The town's part,
And the town's part.
It's an excellent resource.
Saved us a lot of money. And
Can't say enough about it. Yeah. About Bill and everybody in Consolidated.
Great.
All right.
I agree. I think there's, it's difficult to quantify how much Consolidated Facilities has saved the library, and it's difficult to quantify how much IT is taking off your back. It's really it's difficult to evaluate each budget as a boat that has to float on its own.
Right.
That's part of town government. We don't even bill benefits to departments.
Right.
So, there you are. Anyway, any other questions? No?
I just wanted to ask if you would update us on the heat pumps and the expense that's driving the library.
So I think a lot of people know that, by now, that the library was not designed to run on heat pumps, but in the end, the library runs on heat pumps. We have approximately...
Electrical heat pumps.
Electrical heat pumps. We have about 40-odd heat pumps in the library. They were installed, and their brand name is Florida Heat Pump. That should give you a hint as to where they really should be. We've had to repair or replace 2 to 4 heat pumps a year. And this was a great segue. So we had a heat pump fail in the fiction section on the main floor last week. And Consolidated Facilities sent Jim Egan over. He's the HVAC specialist, and he took a look at the heat pump, and the motor had burned out, basically. They burn out, I don't know, they just burn out. So he was able to crawl inside the ceiling and fit in between a 6-inch rafter to replace the motor. Last time we had an inaccessible motor. It cost the library about $4,500 to have the heat pump taken out of the ceiling, sent off for a week or two to be repaired, and then put back into the ceiling. It was about $4,500 in 2 weeks without that heat pump. Jim Egan was able to repair the heat pump in 2 days, and for a cost to the library of under $200 for the piece, the parts. So more often than not, they've been able to repair them for that cost. Every once in a while, it's going to be a greater cost. Now, the other part of that formula, and Ted has it up here, is our electric bill. So our electric bill's high, but our oil and gas bill is very low. Our heat and our air conditioning is run off of the heat pumps. So we've been fortunate this winter, just like we were last winter up till this point, that we haven't used them quite as much. I will say that through a number of things, including moving to LED, more cost-effective outdoor lighting at the library this year, computer replacement, monitor replacements to higher efficiency, playing with the HVAC settings, lowering temperatures at certain points, and changing the calendar for the on and off. We've been able to reduce the amount of electricity we've used this year, but our costs have still increased. So we've reduced usage, but our costs have increased. We anticipated that cost increase. We talked about it last year. The town signed a new electricity contract, which was significantly higher than the previous cost. So we're trying to keep that cost down. We're trying to be more efficient, and we have been. We've been pretty successful being a little bit more efficient, but the costs go up. That's beyond our control as far as the contract goes, but we're still within our budget for fiscal 16. So.
Good news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
And
If anybody has
really
any other
appreciate your.
questions, send me a message or give me a call.
Well, if you can send me that PowerPoint
I will do that.
on an email, I'll get it to everybody here. And I would suggest you send it to the Board of Selectmen.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Thank
Share
you.
it, share it around. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would like to take a 2-minute break. Okay, we are back after having had the library in, and now we're going to welcome Jim Segroy, Director of Information Technology, I believe is your title, or something like that, right?
Correct.
Okay, and we're going to hear about Jim's budget and the state of tech in Town Hall. So we have a pretty simple setup here. We have 2 guys working hard, trying to keep everything straight in the town, and they oversee all the equipment in town. Well, maybe not in the schools, but all the computing and printing equipment in Town Hall, certainly.
All departments?
All departments.
Outside of the town as well?
As well. So the library, for instance, we just heard from. And they administer all the contracts for software support and networking for the town as well. So that's a large piece of their business, and it's the part that keeps growing faster than anything else. So, at any rate, I don't know what you want to tell us about, Jim, but why don't you tell us what the state of the art is here?
Well, I think you all have a handout put together here for the contracts. Ted stated a large portion of our budget goes towards contracts to maintain the infrastructure, network-wise and software-wise. And it's pretty self-explanatory. What we have going here, we're in the midst of a software conversion here. As you're well aware, you funded a phase one of a new software implementation. So that's underway. So we have the WTI Zovrio piece, and we have the SoftWrite piece, which we're moving ahead with. And as you can see in the FY17, we're transitioning into the contract with SoftWrite. And we will also maintain the WTI piece, because as I said, we have two phases. The phase two, which will be the majority of the billing software. We're implementing the treasury piece, the payroll piece, and the financial piece this year. And then the rest of the contracts revolve around network infrastructure, web page, internet provider. Big component is the voice over IP phone system that we maintain. And we've done that for the past several years. This is our second system as far as voice over IP. Our first one was a 3Com system. We transitioned to a Cisco system 3 years ago. So that's a big chunk of change there to maintain that system. And the biggest component here also is the network infrastructure through the company called Global Data Systems that I contract with. They maintain all the security, the firewall protection, the backup local and off to the cloud. And so that's basically it. I don't know if you have any questions on the handout.
Okay, so just want to mention that I cut off the totals on the print area, so you don't see the totals, but you ought to be adding up the bolds, and here they are. It matches up to the budget. It's fiscal year 15, it's $154,650. Fiscal year 2016 jumped up to $201,000, and in fiscal year 2017 we're looking at 227. So that's about a 12% increase. But and these are costs. These are bills. These are contracts we're going to have to pay. I guess I could let Steve ask you, but you bid this stuff out, right?
All of it is, yes, and it's just part of our, what we do.
Okay. So, and are these generally 3-year contracts?
They're annual contracts.
Annual
as a matter of fact.
contracts.
Yep.
So,
And, well, I think we went over this last year, the jump from 15 to 16 on the infrastructure part, the security. That was due in large part because we did have a 3-year contract on a couple of services. And when they came due last year, that contributed to that big jump. But now we've sort of leveled off, so we're pretty steady for the next few years.
so in the so the network stuff is going to be fairly stable then.
Mm-hmm.
But the software, is changing.
So the software is evolving, correct. It's, going to another vendor, it's not an easy process, but the cost should be about the same.
Right, and this is the software, should be explained, I guess, that backs up the town's accounting system.
Correct.
I mean, this is the town's accounting system, is what we're talking about.
Correct.
So we were with WTI, which is,
WT's, they changed names, they're called Zobrio now.
oh, okay, so, anyway, we were with Zobrio, and we're transitioning to SoftWrite.
SoftWrite, who has become Acela. Their company name has changed as well.
And they are now Acela?
Acela.
Okay, so they paid a, sounds like a train. I don't know. Anyway. Anyway, so in fiscal year 2017, we're still thinking we'll be tied into Zobrio for a bit?
Right, because we'll have the billing modules, the tax billing, the assessing piece, the water billing, all those modules.
All the billing modules.
As we transition to the SoftWrite/Acela modules.
Okay.
That's all contingent upon
Right.
funding for this Phase 2.
Well, for fiscal year 2017, we have the modules in place that will demand 41,000 of support.
For the payroll, the financial, and the treasury. And then moving forward will be for the billing.
Treasury. So if we did nothing, this is what we're looking at for fiscal year 2017? Okay. Do you know what a possible timetable might be for adding the next module? It would have to be bought first.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so,
Well, we've already gone through the bidding process.
Okay.
So it would just be a scenario where we would need the funding, obviously.
right, we need the
And then we-
funding. If the funding is available, it could be bought in July. If it was bought in July of 2017, will it come on?
We would start the process of, converting the data,
Okay.
doing the training.
And any additional cost from Acela for that would be offset by cutting down the Zobrio cost at the other end of the year?
As far as maintenance, yes, that would sort of be a wash.
Right.
What you lose on the WTI
Okay,
Zobrio side, you would move over to the seller side.
okay, because for this fiscal year, we were able to provide the $40,000 that was necessary for
To assist in the implementation.
the implementation. Are there implementation costs for the next module?
There would be.
There would be.
There would be.
Yes,
Do we have any idea what those would be?
See, I think I did bring that sheet with me.
Because if we're going to go ahead with picking up the next,
we should tie that into the next module price. Cost.
module, we ought to have that piece added into the capital not bonded.
I'm just going off of a quote that was
Okay.
provided by SoftWrite at the beginning here. And the total for implementing all modules, the implementation came out to roughly $274,301. We have already committed to $153,137.
That's the cost of acquisition and implementation.
Correct. Yeah, 107,900 was for the software modules, 42,000 for implementation, and the maintenance plus the hosting fee, which is an annual fee because it's cloud-based software.
Okay, so the 107,900 was for the
That's for the
ones
software
we've
modules.
already acquired?
Yes.
And the 42 is for
Implementation
implementation, maintenance,
for
and
each-
hosting
On SoftWrite side for implementing each module.
for those?
Three.
For those
Those
three?
three.
Together? Okay. So beyond that, the financial one, the billing module?
That's what I had mentioned in the next phase. That would
Right,
be
in the
phase
next
two.
phase.
Is this year, right?
is-
So that would,
No, this was last year, that's last year's.
so that would be,
So they didn't put it-
I think I heard, each module is maybe another 50,000 for that billing module? Is that correct?
let's see what they have listed here.
Well, we'll have to hear from Capital Improvement Planning Committee on this one, right?
Yeah, we've got the accounting piece was 40,800. Then there was a school admin piece that added another 4,900. So that totaled 45,700. The treasury management module, 8,900. The payroll and human services piece, 48,400. And there was a school admin piece to that, 4,900. So that comes out to the 107,900. And then the maintenance for those modules. And what I'm reading into it for the phase two would be
Well,
no, they did have it listed here. Oh, yeah, here it is. Software for tax collection and software module 42.9. And utility billing software, 40,900. So for the total software expenditure, it came out to 191,700.
but
That's
we've
total.
already paid the
We've already paid the
107,900.
107,
Okay,
yep.
so we're looking at additional
Additional.
80,000, something like that, for the two billing modules.
Right.
Okay. And
And plus the implementation.
the implementation on those two billing modules would be an additional, any idea?
Let's see.
20,000, who knows?
It's about 30, 35.
35?
In that
That
ballpark.
ballpark? Okay.
So I'm looking at the total number that they presented, 191,700 for the software, 76,850 for the implementation, and the state contract, which allows a 3% markup one-time fee, 5751, which brings the total to 274,301.
For everything, and we've spent about 150 of that already.
And then on top of that would be the maintenance, which would sort of be a wash from what we're paying on the Zobrio piece that would transition over to the
Right.
seller piece.
I just want to make sure we aren't in the position, looking at 2017, that we were in for 2016, when we didn't have the funds in anybody's budget to cover the implementation and maintenance.
The only additional piece that will be carried, carried forward for each consecutive year is a $5,000 hosting fee, because like I said, it's a cloud-based product.
Okay. So I guess at some point, the committee just needs to be reassured by the people who might be installing, the town hall people, such as our town accountant, that if this were to happen, that here's our implementation maintenance fee, we will need to have this in your budget. It'll have to be added to your budget,
Right.
okay? If it's going to happen in
The first part of it
2017.
was reflected in the,
Because we don't know how quickly we'll be able to disengage entirely from Zobrio.
correct.
So,
As far as the transition is, yeah.
right, so we'll need something on that. Maybe you and town accountant could work on that, because we don't want your contractual budget to go out and be underfunded
Right.
for what we're trying to get done. Darnell?
Yeah, and on the Zobio piece, can we purchase like a half-year contract on that, or is it going to be a full year?
They're all annual
They're all
contracts.
annual? Yeah, because, so what we're looking at probably at that point, since we're doing a year, the implementation piece, we could be looking at that 45, 46 hitting us, because that stuff might not be ready till the middle of
Right,
that
it-
year.
it-
So, that middle of that fiscal year.
Yeah,
So
it's
if we
it's
get
hard
that
to,
hit-
it's hard to say what month would be the cutoff, so
Oh,
you
so-
have to protect yourself moving forward with it.
Are
So
your
that's an issue.
Are your contracts dated on the fiscal year?
Yes.
Town's fiscal year? Okay,
So that's,
yeah,
looking at having to carry that 46 plus
the
the
35
35 for
for fiscal year
fiscal year
2017.
2017.
So there's a good chance that you're going to need that funding.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, that number can really bump up quickly. So we'd be paying something like, it'll be 76 and
Right, well,
46.
that's a perfect,
yeah.
that kind of cost is a perfect candidate for funding with one-time money, free
Yeah,
cash.
'cause that's gonna, the implementation one.
Well, that's the tricky thing, keeping it all going. And now you keep the library going.
That's worked out well.
Good.
What Will was explaining is we've assumed all of his servers. Last year, when they went new with that library, they installed all new equipment, obviously, so they had servers, PCs, staff PCs, patron PCs, so everything started to deteriorate at the same time. So what we did is we brought them over into our server environment here, which is a virtual environment, and we're doing all of his backup on our side of the server as well. So that happened last year. So that takes the burden of Will having to replace servers and the cost of backing up the data. So that data comes over here, it's backed up, and it's gone off-site.
And he was operating for the first 5 years under
An existing contract.
all-in-one payment.
Right, he had his own
So-
vendor.
So
and
he went
paid-
straight from, being financed for 5 years to being financed by the town IT department. So I don't know how to quantify how much money this saves the library, but they didn't have to
Well,
move
we had to go to
fee
a
structure.
bigger device, as we had mentioned here last year.
Right.
We went from the 2 terabyte unit to a 4 terabyte unit. So we needed to go that next level up, just based on the amount of data that we were generating. So bringing him on didn't really impact us that much. Other than the
That's great.
fact that we had to build a server, and it adds one more server to our environment. So we've got a total right now, I believe, of 14 virtual servers on 4 physical servers.
So, Darnell,
And can you give us, because we talked about the phone systems, and this is all in that service and things we're looking out for going forward. Right now, the contract we have out for our phone system, it does not include the hardware itself. And can you give us like a brief overview of like our strategic plan for replacing these phones as they
Breakdown.
break down, and how it's a better situation than we were in prior when we were with the older system.
The 3Com, right.
With the 3Com
Well, as
system.
you can see, that right there that's a standard phone that's on the majority of desks throughout the town. The Cisco, that's a 2-button phone. Some of the other users have a 6-button phone. It all depends on how many lines, but that particular phone, I think, is around $300. And basically, since we've had it, the hardware has been very reliable. I mean, Cisco is noted for its, its equipment. But in the event that it does go down, you could cover that phone, the 200 and something phones we have in the network, under an agreement, but you'd be paying much more into the contract than what it would cost just to replace a phone here or a phone there. So that's where we're at with that. Anything that breaks phone-wise, we would replace it. Switches, we would replace them. I have under this contract the major switches and routers at the town hall, the police. We have a major server at town hall and at our head end at the Pierce Middle School location. So those main pieces of equipment are covered under this contract with Presidio. So all the other components would be a replace.
So we have, you have equipment at Pierce?
Yes, there's a server, a redundant server. So if the server here at Town Hall fails, we wouldn't lose phone service. It would bounce over to the other server, and vice versa. If the one at the Pierce end failed, it would bounce over to here.
That's good. That's great.
So in covering that hardware, you also cover the software. So if they need to bring out a new server, they also need to install the software on that server. So you have to pay for that upgraded software, which is included in the contract.
So when I'm looking at your Schedule E, you only have one line item's worth of difference for $20,000 between your non-contingent budget and your contingent budget, and that's for equipment.
Equipment.
So is that just, do you have something specific in mind? You know
Just
it's coming
equipment
down?
in general.
Just
whether it-
equipment in
whether it-
general?
Whether it be our phones,
Okay.
our switches, our routers, printers, laptop computers, items like that. Because I like to turn equipment over every 4 years, roughly, just to keep everything current on the desktop, because that's what the workers rely on day in and day out to generate, all the information that gets put out there to the public and to serve the public, basically.
Are we doing any more work with tablets or anything like that?
There are a few of them out there. The police department uses a few. I believe the DPW has a few. The selectmen, they use we could transition them over to tablets once we, outdate what they're using now at their meetings. They now have just laptop computers. So.
I like laptops. Okay. Does anybody have some questions for Jim? Steve?
Not really a question, maybe it's an observation on the network stuff. I mean, I don't know, I sort of have this expectation that over time, more and more of, town governments will migrate into the network, but looking at it, 15 to 16, the increase was 5%, 16 to 17, it's 6%. Just leaves me to wondering how much of the efficiencies is going to get eaten into by a cost that's growing ahead of our ability to continue to pay it. That's all, something to watch, I guess, over time, but,
It's hard.
yeah.
It's hard. This is why I wanted to have contracts separated from general expenses so that we could see what was happening with them. But these are, so do you have, I mean, that brings up your penchant for asking for bids. Do you have competitive suppliers that will provide you with bids on an annual basis?
All of these vendors are state vendors. They're on the state bid list.
But for instance, they have competitors also on the state bid list?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And you solicit more than one?
Which would basically give you roughly the same pricing.
Right, of course.
If they're under that umbrella of the.
Approved.
Was it the IT, it's on here, the IT ITS 42 is what the SoftWrite contract came under. So any vendor that's providing this type of software would come under that contract.
Yeah, I'm not questioning it at all. I'm just observing that whenever this group sees a budget item that's growing at more than 2.5% or 3%, we go, this is something that Warrant's keeping an eye on, because it's not, like I said, it's above the 3%, it's maybe not sustainable. It's a small amount of money, but if we're growing
Right.
our presence, the amounts are gonna go up, and, compounded with the interest, it gets real expensive real quick.
Yeah, unfortunately, that it does go up a little higher than, what everything else does. But, and it's, it's what they can charge us. It's,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and one of the things about the service contract, and we talked about this with the IT department, and we talked about this a number of years ago about watching the growth of that department, because it's one of those departments in town that's gonna grow independent of whatever happens with the budget. Because we are gonna try to get more technologically savvy, or we're gonna try to save exponentially. So, yeah, we're gonna see a growth here, but we wanna see that it's savings somewhere else, in the accounting department, in the treasury, in the other things that we're not one-to-one,
get
comparing where this money is saving us on the other end. Same thing like when we went with the new tracking software and everything over at the DPW, and be able to track stuff, become more efficient, save money, save time over there. That's directly tied into some of the stuff we're doing here, and that flows back down through the IT department. And so, yeah, it looks like it's jumping here. It's just that we don't have that offsetting savings that we can just point to.
No,
one to
I
one,
get
and
that, I
that's-
get that. That
so-
wasn't really, the point I was making was that if you save 3% on your DPW, but this is going up 6% a year, that it's eating into that savings, so you're not saving as much as you thought you were saving.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, but it's not just the DPW, it's
Right.
across the whole town.
Right,
That's
I
why
get
we're
that.
going to the SoftWrite stuff, that's why we're going there, because we're expecting to see savings in time, savings in overall functionality of, how we're doing things. And the cost that we are actually going to see is that rise in the maintenance costs of those programs and everything else. And it's just there.
I think it's always difficult to quantify how much you're going to save, because of technological gain. Sometimes I think in some areas it can be a myth. If there's no personnel left to cut because you're getting more
Take you
efficient,
10 times longer to check out a
you're not
book.
going to save money. Some of the things that the new software might do is make the job of the warrant committee a lot easier and efficient. With the budget forecasting, that doesn't save the town money. It just makes our job easier. So it's you end up with a better product, but it still might cost you the same. Or more, because the better product is relying on a newer and expensive technology. But, there it is. Mike?
A long time ago, I worked for this insurance company that insured practically every house in Homestead, Florida, and then Hurricane Andrew happened and wiped out all their nest egg, all their retainer eggs. They're on do-or-die situation, kind of like if you had to not have a contingent budget, you had the override failed. So what they did was they did not renew their support contracts for the software. They just said, it's working, it's always worked, and we just can't afford $130,000 this year.
until it fails.
No, I'm just saying, so if that happened to you, would you defer going to the new software and keep the old stuff going, or would you say, call them up and say, you know what, we're not even going to use you the second half of this
Well,
year?
either way, we need to transition, because the WTI software, Zobrio software, will reach end of life. They're going to be moving to another version of their software. So we would have to convert one way or the other, whether it be Zobrio or whether it be the SoftWrite seller.
Okay, but I'm just saying, this is like a person's, like 45 grand is like someone's job possibly, so you would still have to pay those 2 support contracts.
Right.
Even if the override, okay. And another question I have, are there any technical issues with getting the bylaws of the town and the zoning on the website? Like,
Well-
I believe we do have them.
The bylaws, Mike, the bylaws of the town are on the website. Question is, are the zoning bylaws up to date on the website? That's the issue. They're on there already.
right, that's my question, though.
Yeah,
there
The laws of the town, are they, you know, it seems to be a
We're
lag.
available to, we'll post whatever, we get.
So it's not a technical, there's no technical issue with
No.
getting them on there, it's just, it's a,
No. That's actually the contract you see there for virtual town hall. So it's unlimited what we can put on the web. It's unlimited.
okay.
As far as you were mentioning the cost savings, we're right now, we're in the middle of implementing the biweekly payroll.
Right.
That's going to be moving forward. This will be, the 14th will be a no-pay week. The 21st will be the first biweekly. So we've transitioned into that. We're also implementing a automated pay stub system where there will be no more physical paychecks given out, that if you want to see your pay stub, you will get it emailed to you, and you will open it up in the form of a secure PDF. And that's already been sent out as a test basis. We're trying to acquire everybody's email addresses. Everyone that works on the town side, we've given them a townofmilton.org address. Will has the OCLN for the library. The schools, MPD Milton, miltonps.org, the police, mpdmilton.org. So everybody is being fed these emails. And what they do is they register if they want that pay stub electronically sent to them. And they also have the opportunity to change that. They can send it to a private email if they wish. So this just needs to be re-registered in the system, and off it will go to your Gmail account or Yahoo account.
So, I know this may not be your bailiwick, but where is that going to save us money?
Time saved in the treasury processing.
So the treasurer's budget.
Well, I don't know how much, but the amount of physical paychecks that they have to generate paper gives his staff time to do other functions in the office. So they're not doing that weekly payroll routine.
No, I'm all for it. I'm just wondering if there will be an actual cash savings in his budget, because he didn't talk about that when he was here.
I can't answer that on.
Right.
Yeah.
No problem. Any other questions for Jim? No? Hey, thanks a lot for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
and,
Oh, thank you.
On that $300
phone,
phone,
yeah.
it work sounds beautiful.
And it's clear as a bell.
So Lee Michael, we're hoping to get you back soon.
I will be back on Thursday night. Before somebody jumps in and makes a motion to adjourn, though, I just wanted to let folks know that we were very, very close on the warrant for the special town meeting, and waiting to flow in the the recommendation from tomorrow night. Ted, do you want to just give a 1-minute overview on what the plan is for that one?
Sure. Our plans for tomorrow night, as you know, there's a presentation at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, which is being held at the Council on Aging at 7 o'clock on Article 4, the Storm Water Utility Fund. And immediately after that, a presentation is supposed to be about an hour and a half. Immediately after that, at 8:30, we can convene in a classroom at the Council on Aging and take a vote on a recommendation, whether or not we support this article or not. I think I think, and we can discuss it then, but I think that it's, read it over, think about it. It's kind of an easy call in a way, because I think it will efficiently spread the costs of the system over the users, and I think that'll be great. But we'll take a vote on that, and then if we can do that, then we can get the warrant to the printer on time. At any rate, I think that's about it. Anything else to add, Lee Michael?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay. Now I'll take Steve.
Adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thanks very much. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank you.